Hi, and welcome to Essential Ingredients. I'm the guest today, and we have a role reversal. Shelley Zalis is your host. And thank you, Shelley Zalis. She's the founder of Female Quotient, and she is taking over the role of host today on Essential Ingredients.
Hey, Justine. So I am pretty excited to be playing the host of a podcast called Essential Ingredients, especially because I can't cook for the life of me. I can't even get a cake out of a pan. So for me to be hosting a show on changing the future of food and all about essential ingredients and about next gen chefs, I am pretty honored, inspired, a little intimidated, but ready to go. So welcome everyone to Essential Ingredients, powered by NextGenChef. So happy to have you all here, and I'm thrilled to have my guest, Justine Reichman, who is the host of Essential Ingredients. So pretty silly that we're doing this, but pretty exciting. And I have to say that, you know, friends come in the craziest ways. We met through our hairdresser. So if you can see how beautiful our hair color is, we say we are the Canali girls. Thank you, Michael Canali, for introducing me to such a remarkable human. So tell us, Justine, what is the show? What is Essential Ingredients?
Essential Ingredients is a podcast that features entrepreneurs, founders, researchers, people changing the future of food, sharing their stories so that other founders can make more informed choices, so that ultimately we can build a better food system.
So what needs to change? Like when we talk about changing the future of food, what's broken?
So what needs to change is that people don't have the education, the information to build good options and make healthy food accessible. And whether you're a business or an end consumer, we just lack the information to make these informed choices. So my goal is really to rebuild the whole system, right? So that if the businesses have access to the information, the end consumers have the access to the information, we can all have access to better food and healthier food options.
So how do you share that information? Are there food groups that you're recommending putting into your diet and certain food groups that we should be taking out? Like what's the right blend of food to live a healthier lifestyle?
So I am not the expert. What I do is I interview all those experts. I interview the researchers. I interview people in agriculture. I interview people in food waste. I interview people that have been in this and that are making remarkable changes and that are doing the research and building the businesses so that we have the benefit of what they're doing. And so that we can take that information and make the informed choices to know what to put in our diet. So I'll bring on nutritionists, I'll bring on doctors, I'll bring on people that are building businesses and new businesses that might make a new food that is taking into account the way that the soil, where the soil was and how the soil contributed to the kind of meat I'm sorry, not the meat, the produce that they're growing, right? So what goes into the soil determines what kind of produce you're getting. And so it goes back to understanding what people are putting in their soil, but people don't know this. We're not advertising this. This happens through education. So the more that we can educate, the more people can make more informed choices. Again, both for the businesses as well as the end consumers, because if the businesses understand, they can make better choices when they're deciding at a restaurant level, at a chef's level, right? When they're making their menu, or when they're making soups to put in the store, or when you're buying food for your family.
Or for your dog. What did you tell me? What's the best food for the dog?
Well, we make our food at home for the dogs.
Of course you do.
But there are a lot of healthy options, by the way, for the dogs, like Just Food for Dogs.
Grass-fed.
Grass-fed meat, all sorts
See,
of
I
things.
learned that already from you in one quick minute. Grass-fed, when you drop your dog off for dog sitting, I know that I have to give them grass-fed food, of which you've already offered to bring to me because I don't know how to make it, which we've already established. So some things you found, because we've already talked about junk in, junk out, which is why it's so important to understand that we need good soil so that the soil produces good food. What are some of the lessons learned from the people you've interviewed?
So from some of the people I've learned from talking with some of the people, I've learned about food waste, food loss, the difference between food loss and food waste. There's a lot of blame going on, and there's a lot of waste in our kitchens, and there's a lot of loss on the farms because of produce that just falls off the trees. Um, there's a lot of loss that's going on and waste that's going on in the restaurants these days. And then what I've also learned is that a lot of these businesses can't succeed because it's very expensive when they get going, right? And they don't have the resources that they need. And through COVID, they've had a lot of challenges. That said, there are a lot of resources out there. A lot, not a lot. There are some resources out there, and people are really trying to support them. There are funds out there for people.
I also heard that there's a lot of ghost kitchens where you can share the resources, which I think is a brilliant idea.
Ghost kitchens are popping up left and right. And one of the things that NextGenChef is trying to do is really provide resources for these startups. Ghost kitchens, because it allows them to work in a kitchen that they don't have to necessarily own the whole thing. They can pay for the time that they need. These collaborative kitchens also, right? Where they can just use it and then they can walk away, so to speak, which I think are great. They're popping up in LA.
Uber for chefs. Or a WeWork space for chefs.
It's totally a WeWork space, and it also allows them to collaborate with other people. There's one in the peninsula down here, a collaborative kitchen kind of place, and there's a bunch in Oakland, and there's a bunch in New York that I know, and it allows people to connect with each other, to collaborate, to work together. It's a really great option for people as they're starting out, before they build out their own space, which is very expensive.
And what are people suggesting when you talked about waste at home? What are some solutions around that?
Well, there's first in, first out, right? So what does that mean? That means that when you're buying food and you're putting it in your refrigerator, that if you're buying it now, you put in and then you leave. The oldest stuff is always in the front so that you make sure that you eat. But we did a podcast and we invited on the people from Imperfect Produce, which is a solution for people that want to eat the imperfect produce out there that often gets tossed. People don't like to buy it because it's not as pretty. And it's a great business idea because a lot of that produce would have just gotten wasted, right? But these people created a great business model out of selling imperfect produce as opposed to wasting it.
So smart. So discounted for produce that's been on the shelf for a little while and ready to eat in the moment.
I don't even think it's been on the shelf for a while. It was going to be thrown out because stores didn't want it because it's not perfectly red tomato, or maybe it's, it doesn't look perfect. It's not like a perfect, carrot. Maybe it has an indentation or something, right?
Oh, very interesting. Imperfect food.
Imperfect food.
Imperfect food is perfect. Right?
Exactly. I will say some of their produce comes from Mexico, so it's not all local. Some people like to eat local. So if you like to eat local, imperfect produce or imperfect foods may not be your choice, but it does solve a really big problem. So there's a lot of, one of the things that I learned was from that podcast that we did with them, first in, first out. Another tip that I learned from them was with the celery and with a lot of the vegetables, the carrots, cut them, put them in water, put them in a glass, in the jar, in the refrigerator. They last longer. I never even thought of that.
These are really helpful tips. Well, all of a sudden I thought it's true. When you go to the supermarket and you pull the first items on the shelf, and the further back you go are the newer ones. So they put the older ones up front to get them off the shelf, and they keep moving up. So that's what you have to do in your refrigerator. First in, first out.
Exactly.
Very smart thinking. Okay, I love these tips. These are really great tips. I'm learning so much so quickly.
I learned
And
so
I'm the
much. I
host.
learned so much on my podcast all the time. We had one woman come on to talk about eat less water and now we have a drought going on, right? And so how relevant is that? And it was about not the actual drinking water, right? It wasn't about just eating less water. It was about how to eat in your kitchen with foods that require less water. So the foods that you're eating, that you're preparing, required less water to produce them. So I thought that was super interesting.
Wow. So, what are some of your favorite foods?
Some of my favorite foods, gosh, well, I'm a big foodie. I don't eat everything. I love everything from great produce to a great steak to oysters. I mean, I love it all. I do. And I love it all. And I love innovative foods. I love when things are creative.
Like what? Like what's a great example? What's a great restaurant that has innovative food?
I mean, the other day I went to Hog Island Oyster, which is a seafood restaurant, a fish restaurant here in Marin, and also in San Francisco, and also in West Marin. And they made this amazing crudo, and it was a halibut with like red onions or shallots, and then some little green onions, and then a strawberry on top, and a little bit of olive oil, and a little bit of Celtic sea salt. Or I might have been making up that it was Celtic. It might have been.
The fact that you even know it's called Celtic, salt is salt to me, but I know this.
But it was the big flakes. It was the big flakes. It's not like iodine.
I think it's kosher salt.
It wasn't kosher salt. It was not kosher salt, but it was amazing. And it had a little chili flake on it too.
Wow.
But it was also simple. It didn't have any heavy glazes on it or anything like that. And it maintained the integrity of the fish and the simple strawberry, and you could taste every flavor in it.
Essential Ingredients is powered by NextGenChef. NextGenChef is a movement that supports food and beverage entrepreneurs around the world by fostering a sense of community and providing its members access to mentors and a wealth of resources and guidance. NextGenChef feeds members with the knowledge they need to build better for you food and beverage businesses so the world can have greater access to healthier food, comprehensive food education, and increased affordability. If you like what you hear on this podcast, continue the conversation or ask new questions on the NextGenChef app, available in the Apple Store and Google Play. Follow NextGenChef on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook at NextGenChef. Join NextGenChef and let's change the future of the food industry together.
And so, NextGenChef, is there a generation of new chefs coming in that, are they just next gen because they're modern chefs, or are they the new young generation coming in with a new mindset?
So it's interesting you asked that. So NextGenChef, when it was in its infancy, was about the next generation of chefs. And since it's taken off, or since it's grown, it's really about chefs, food businesses, anybody changing the future of food. And it's about the next generation of people in food, building better for you food businesses. And it's about encouraging and collaboration and building, I like to say, collaborating, innovation, and being innovative. So that's
presentation.
Our core. At our core, we're collaborating, innovating, and being, and working together to build the future of food. So it's a movement to change the future of food, to create greater access to healthy food. And it's not just done here. We're meant to build ecosystems around the world to support these startups and these entrepreneurs through collaboration, innovation, and community, right? So we do this through the app, and we do this through our podcast by bringing together sharing these stories and these recipes that people are sharing, right? Really, there are personal recipes of success and failures and all sorts of things. And so I use this podcast as a way for people to share their voice, what's worked for them, what hasn't worked for them. And the app, which we use, is a way for them to connect and collaborate and innovate and connect one-on-one and really use it as a way to cross-pollinate and connect around the world, because we want these people to learn from each other, from here to Berlin and around, everywhere.
I think it sounds like a show in the making. NextGenChef, I think, is a really great name for a show.
Well, you
heard it here.
I'd love to have a show, but one thing I wanted to just go back to, you said something about mindset, and it's really funny because I do want to create the next gen mindset and the next gen philosophy, if you will, because we want to support our community with the next gen mindset, and we want to have the next gen purpose, and it's all meant to create the next gen chef.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like a family of next gen purpose.
Are there great apps out there, that have healthy, nutritious, essential ingredient recipes?
There's a variety of them, and we're starting to curate them and add them to our
good idea
as they join the Next Gen Chef community, because they're building better for you businesses and better for you resources. So we're encouraging them to, as they build their businesses, to join the community. It's free to join the community, and we want them to be a resource for the movement, for people to be able to have access to this information. So there are a variety. We're starting to add them as they reach out and as we reach out. So
I also think healthy eating, if you start your kids at a young age, they grow up, wanting and knowing about essential ingredients in healthy, nutritious eating.
Yes, it's true. Well, I think it's, what do they call that? It's like nurture versus nature, right? If it's inbred in you. I was having a conversation earlier on an earlier podcast with some people. We were talking about in the 70s, the organic movement and how it was then. And I was like, my mother was all over that in the 70s. I thought she was, a little cuckoo, but, and now we have the regenerative agriculture thing, but it's true. Like, I'm here talking about this because back in the 70s, my mother was buying organic lettuce and she was dragging me to the stores to buy the organic produce and the organic things. And I thought she was a little off her rocker, but she was just ahead of her time.
Well, I mean, look, now there's Whole Foods and there's all these markets that we didn't, I'm 59. We certainly did not have that in, when my mom was raising her children. We didn't have a Whole Foods or,
we didn't have it in the 70s either, but.
Right. So it's just really interesting times. And what's your favorite dish to make?
Right. I love to make Passover. No, that's not a dish. That's a whole thing. I like to make Passover.
I've never heard that one before. It's so limiting.
Aside from the potato latkes, I like to make Passover.
That's the funniest thing I've ever heard. That's the hardest holiday to cook for, because
I took out the hardest thing to make, which is the potato latkes.
Oh my God, that is hysterical. I think that is absolutely hysterical. Well, I am so thrilled to be hosting your podcast. I'm so glad that you are so much better than I am at hosting your podcast, because that's what makes you you. That's what makes you the Next Gen Chef. And really, so for everyone, please tune in to Essential Ingredients all the time, because it is a show that will keep you informed, in the know, and super duper healthy. So stay nutritious and tune in.
Thank you, Shelley. Thanks so much for joining us. We're here every Tuesday. Essential Ingredients. You can find us on iHeartRadio, iTunes. If you like what you hear, please follow us and subscribe. We'll see you again next week.
To find out more about this episode of Essential Ingredients and access show notes, check out Next Gen Chef and choose podcast in the menu bar. If you like this episode, head to iTunes or Next Gen Chef's YouTube channel to subscribe. Learn more about Next Gen Chef, the platform that powers this podcast, by checking out our website, or visit us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at NextGenChef. You can also check out my Instagram at Justine_Reichman. If you have thoughts about this episode or future episode ideas, leave us a comment at NextGenChef's YouTube channel or drop an email at team@nextgenchef.com. Thanks for joining us.